Okay, so for round 5, I've finished my repeat. You can see it's nice and square. I've slip stitched the top of the first cluster. So then you're going to slip stitch in 3 chain space, slip stitch in the cluster, and slip stitch in the 3 chain space. So what you're doing there, if I look at it as a square, with these being my corners, you're moving over to the corner space, which is the 3 chain that sits between the sets of 2 clusters. So I've slip stitched across to there, and then it says in the same space make. That's a bit better this time because we're not doing clusters. So it goes a bit quicker. 3 chain, 1 treble, 3 chain, 2 trebles. And this is the round where we're going to start working with the beads. So that's my corner space where I've done 2 trebles, 3 chain, 2 trebles. I'm going to get my beads ready. You can hear them plonking about on the floor. Here's my ball of wool. So I'm going to move my beads up the ball of wool, ready to work with them. Don't worry, if you're not doing beads, you just do it without the beads. Okay, 3 chain, 1, you can really hear them, 2, 3. Pull up a bead and slip stitch into the 3 chain space and around the bead. So that's in this space. Do a slip stitch. So get your hook into that space to slip stitch. Put the hook bead, push the bead to the front and pull the yarn from behind it back through, oops, and through. Oh, hang on, no, don't get tangled like me. Let's do it again. Through there, bead up here, hook onto the yarn and put it through there and through the loop on your hook. That's because I'm trying to do it under the camera. That's it. And that's your slip stitched around your bead. Okay. Next round, we do something to make that sit more at the front. So don't worry if it's not sitting too much at the front. 3 chain. And as Ruth pointed out in the pattern, I've called it, I've put in, we're on to the repeat, we've got a single asterisk. In the double crochet, you should say in the stitch, because actually it's the stitch at the top of that double, treble, 2 together that we did last round. Make, so in the next stitch, make 2 trebles, 3 chain, 2 trebles. So the next stitch ahead is here. If I put that down and show you carefully, it's this stitch here. So we've done a 3 chain, and in there we're going to make, in the V, 2 trebles, 1, 2, you stay at the front, 3 chain, and 2 trebles. This is where it's going to not be a square anymore. It's going to become more of a snowflake shape because you've got these little corners coming along the edge as well. Then you 3 chain, and we're going to slip stitch in this space here. So we're skipping over here, we're skipping these spaces, and the way it says, what it says is slip stitch into the first 3 chain space and around the bead. So that is in this space here, the one that sits between the 2 clusters. So I've done my little shell stitch here, which is the 2 trebles, 3 chain, 2 trebles. Now I've done a 3 chain and I'm going in here for my slip stitch. Pull up a bead and slip stitch. Okay. And then a 3 chain. And then in the next space, which is the one that sits right in the corner between these 2 sets of 2, this one here, you're doing 2 trebles, 3 chain, 2 trebles, 2 trebles, 3 chains, 2 trebles. So there we go. That's one edge done. Chain 3. And the next 3 chain space, which sits between your 2 clusters, pull up a bead and slip stitch in that space and around the bead, like so. And then pop him through there. 3 chain into the stitch, move along the edge, find the next stitch along, which is here, do 2 trebles, chain 3, 2 trebles. 3. Okay. You've still got that structure of the square there, but we're adding on these little corner spaces along the edges as well. Chain 3, skip into the first 3 chain space, which is the one that sits between these 2 clusters. Slip stitch in there, pull up the bead, hang on before you slip stitch, come here bead. If you're doing a bead, don't have to do a bead. If you're not doing beads, obviously you just slip stitch and slip stitch around the bead. 3 chain into the next corner, in the next 3 chain space, which is one that sits right in the corner between these 2 sets of 2 clusters. 2 trebles. I'm not expecting you to keep up at this point. I'm going to go ahead for the recording's sake so you can watch it back afterwards. I've done my 2 trebles, my 3 chain, my 2 trebles, chain 3, slip stitch in the next one and pull up a bead. Stitch around the bead again, chain 3, long to the next stitch and do 2 trebles. 2 trebles. Nearly finished my little repeat all the way around now. 3 chain. I think the beads are quite pretty actually. They add a little bit of interest. Skip across the first 3 chain space, slip stitch in there, pulling up a bead. So hopefully, it probably seems a bit manic at the moment with me demonstrating it, but when you come to do it, if you're not there yet, hopefully you'll get into the pattern of it. 3 chain, 2 trebles, 2 trebles. So it is a nice little repeat when you're doing it, and it helps to sort of put it down occasionally and look at the shape of it. Slip stitch in a 2 chain space around the bead, 3 chain into the next stitch, do 2 trebles, 3 chain, 2 trebles, 3 chain again, final bead, stop clanking about now, and my final slip stitch around the bead goes in this 3 chain space here, which is actually where I started before I did my slip stitches across. And then it's 3 chain, slip stitch to the third of the 3 chain. So when you're reading the pattern, whoopsie, it tells you to follow the repeat from the 1 asterisk to the 2, but on the second repeat end at this little hat, what are they called? Can't think what they're called, but anyway, which is here, and then slip stitch the third of 3 chains. That's what I just did. You probably won't even need to look at that because it probably makes sense. I'm going to move forward. I'm not expecting you to be going at my pace, but I want to get it recorded so I can get it onto Facebook for you later. Round 6, slip stitch in the stitch. So ahead of me I have this stitch, which is that treble. Make a slip stitch in there and slip stitch in the 3 chain space. So if you still think about it as a square, even though it's got pointy bits on the edges now, I've moved across into the next corner. In the same space, you make a 3 chain and then a 2 treble cluster. So it's just giving us a little point. And if we look at this bit here, this is the pattern we've been making with the clusters. It's the final point on your spoke of your snowflake. This bit here. So we're there. We're at the last bit before we join it to the hoop. And then you 6 chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Double crochet in the slip stitch behind the bead. So this helps to put the bead where it should be. I'm just going to go into this one piece of yarn here. You can go further behind if you want. Experiment with how it makes your bead sit. And just make a double crochet in there. So if the bead wants to go behind like it is here, that gives you the opportunity to push it forward. 6 chain again. And do a double crochet in the chain 3 space. So that's at this point here. Six chains. And double crochet behind the bead. Again, experiment with bringing it forward. There you go. You can see, I showed you him a minute ago. He was trying to hide. Now he's pushing forward. 6 chains again. And in the corner, because we're now on the sort of corner space, you do a 3 treble cluster. Because that is the point of these clusters that we've been doing. We've been building up all the other rounds. That makes the point of the snowflake. Whoops. 6 chain again. And double crochet behind the bead. 6 chain again. So don't worry, you can watch all of this back. And double crochet in a 3 chain space. 6 chain again. And double crochet behind the bead. 6 chain again. And cluster in the next space, which is the corner. So if you're making this and you're thinking, I probably won't get around to putting it on a hoop, you might not even want this round because you might want to keep it square, but it has a nice bit of shape to it. 6 chains, slip stitch behind the bead, 6 chain, double crochet in the 3 chain space, nearly at the end. So also I was thinking, if you did this shape and decide to leave it there, you could put some little tassels or something in the corner and it could be a jug cover. Just thinking of all the other uses you could have for it. 6 chain, double crochet behind the bead. 6 chain. I think, am I back to where I started? No, I need to do one more, nearly back there. Cluster in the corner. Double crochet behind the bead. I'm nearly there. That you can see I'm coming along to where I started, which is here. 6 chain. Double crochet in a 3 chain space. 6 chain. Double crochet behind the bead. And that takes me back to where I started. I just need to do a 6 chain and slip stitch the top of this first cluster that I made. And then I can show you how that looks. There we go. Really pretty, even like that, really pretty. So we're finally on to, you worked really hard this morning, and next month I'll do something that's a bit more repetitive so you can chat as well. We're finally on to attaching it to the hoop. What I'm doing now, the reason you've got to pause is because I had to take it off the other hoop. Right, hoop. So it says, hold hoop behind, you'll now join the work to it. So you're going behind there. 6 chain, 1 double crochet in the stitch, which is the stitch at the top of the bead. So we're not actually joining it yet. 6 chain. And now we're on the stitch that sits in the middle of the 3 chain here. So on the next stitch, it says slip stitch in the double crochet and around the hoop. So for this one, go into the stitch, hold the yarn behind, pull the yarn through the stitch, around the loop, hoop, and through the stitch. So you're slip stitching it onto the hoop, but only in these corners, which is going to pull it into the snowflake shape.
Okay.
6 chains. Bit fiddly, but bear with this because not too many stitches. So double crochet in the stitch. So when you want to stitch at the top of the bead, you don't go around the hoop. 6 chain. Now I'm going to go into the stitch, which is the cluster stitch, and I'm going to go around the hoop. There's no bead here. And it probably looks really, how on earth is she doing that? But when you do it, it works. So you might have your wooden embroidery hoop, or you might have a metal hoop, or you might decide you don't want a hoop. But if you do want a hoop, you slip stitch on the pointy corners, not on the beads. Chain 6. There's only a few of them. There's 8 of them to do in actual fact. So it does go quite quick, even though it's fiddly. Here's a bead, so I'm just going to double crochet in the stitch at the top of the bead, not around the hoop. Chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I'm going into this stitch, and because there's no bead there, it's one of the cornery ones, go around that and around the hoop. So you just put in the yarn. When you put your hook under, as well as going under the stitch, go under the hoop. So the yarn comes around the hoop. Bit fiddly. You can do a double crochet, it's a bit easier, but it slides a bit more. And there we go. So you can see it joining on. And there's a lot of stretch here. So if yours is feeling like it might be too small, don't panic because it will stretch. You can always do more than 6 chains as well, or less. So if it feels like it's stretching too much, you could do 8 chains, for example. Or if it's not enough, if it's a bit baggy in your hoop, you could do 4 chains. So have a little play with that. I know we've run a little bit behind. We're a few minutes after 11:30, but I'm just going to go around to the end because I think it's quite nice to see the outcome. Nearly there. Just take me a minute or 2 more. When you're on the bead, you just do a double crochet. You don't join to the hoop. And go in the stitch. Go around the hoop as well. At the moment, they're all bundling up here. It doesn't matter. I'm going to stretch them out as I go. You can see, look, nearly there. Can put it in front of me for me. It's quite hard doing it under the camera. 6. One thing, however, having said that, when things are fiddly with crochet, or you can't quite make sense of where you're going with it, I've said this before, it's quite useful to put it down on a table because quite often we work on our laps, and I definitely do that. But when you see something laid out on a table or flat surface of some kind, it actually sometimes makes more sense.
Mm.
So a
Mm.
little tip for any pattern you're working on, if you're thinking, I don't really know where they want me to work. I know it probably seems obvious, but it's not obvious to me. It's like I'll sit and look at it on my lap and think I just don't know, and then I put it on the table and think, oh, so it is something that can kind of help. I'm nearly there. Right. It's really fiddly. Just persevere because before you know it, you're done and it looks great. But this last bit, round 7, a bit frustrating. However, I'm there. There we go. Done. Now, to make your loop, all I did at this stage was pull that final loop that was on my stitch after my final slip stitch up to the height I wanted it, turn
Yes.
it over, and then just cut the end further down your ball of yarn. And then if you just weave in that end, that will secure your loop to hang it from. And
Okay.
the only end to weave in is the beginning tail. Do you want me to show you how to do tassels, or have you had enough now? Hang on, removing spotlight to see. Thumbs up for tassels. No, everyone's fine. Okay, good, good. Okay, well, I'm sorry there was a lot of content today. Let's just stop the recording so we can chat.